operations manager. We've also got one of our market research analysts, Genesee Rodriguez, with us. And yeah, we're gonna get started in a couple minutes. In the meantime, I do also want to let you know that we've got our SEO engineer, Alex Sklar, who's gonna be joining us, and then also one of our managers of content strategy, Faji Muhammad. So while we give people an extra minute, I do want to just kind of jump into what our agenda is going to be. I'm generally not an agenda person, but I think that there's so much information here, and you may be wondering, like, hey, when are we going to get to the, how do you capitalize on search and things like that? I think it's very important that we give the context behind what's going on in the world so we can better understand what those insights are going to be. So we'll talk a little bit more on just who we are, what we do, and so on for anyone who isn't familiar with us. Then we'll talk a lot about what's going on environmentally. We'll talk about what's happening for different companies, and then we'll get into the consumer insights. Then we'll talk about opportunities and implications across the different marketing channels, and then how you should think about changing your approach. And then we'll end it off with some key opportunities and closing remarks. But like I said, I'm going to give it another 30 or so seconds for people to show up, and then we'll be off into the races. In the meantime, feel free to check in on, I don't know what side it is for you. Maybe this side, I don't know. We've got a chat box where all of you can say what's up. I see my Aunt Karen's in the building. Hello, hello. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat room. Also at the bottom, there's a place where you can pose questions. And, we'll answer those questions as we get to the end. For anyone that wants to know, you're also going to get a recording of this after the fact. And, we expect that it's going to take about an hour. So, yeah, I think that's enough stalling. Let's get into it. Cool. So, yeah, just a quick introduction here. As we all know, the coronavirus is something that's taken the world by storm, not something that any of us really expected. And so now the United States has become the epicenter of such, and New York City, of all places, has become the epicenter of the United States. So broadcasting live from New York, it's Wednesday afternoon live, and I'm very excited that everyone is here for the webinar because we've got a lot of insights that we want to share with you guys and girls or ladies. So like I said before, your cast today is myself. I'm Mike King, the founder and managing director here at iPullRank. We've got Genesee Rodriguez, who's also going to be contributing a lot of our consumer insights during the discussion today. She's one of our market research analysts. We've got Faji Muhammad, one of our managers of content strategy, who's also going to be contributing here today. And then we've got Nate Turner, our marketing operations manager, who's going to talk a bit about ways that you can capitalize in different channels. And then Alex Sklar, our SEO engineer, who has been a bit of a Cassandra for us with respect to a variety of conspiracies, but of course, the coronavirus. And he's got a lot to say about the future of marketing after this is all over. So in case this is your first time ever seeing us or meeting us, we're a digital marketing agency based here in New York City. We primarily do content strategy and SEO and all the things that go with that. So, I like to believe that if you're doing paid search, you should also be doing organic search. And because of that, we also do that integrated search work like that. But, you can find out a ton more about us at iPullRank.com, but that's not what you're here for today. You're here to talk about this thing that's on your screen and how we're all affected by it. So before we get into the data and insights behind everything, and there's some cool stats that Google provided, specifically that more people are buying from places that they normally wouldn't buy from. And then they also segmented the types of searches that people are doing at this point between, assembling critical info, discovering new connections, adjusting to changes in their routines, praising everyday heroes, and then of course, taking care of themselves. And I believe all that stuff is important, but again, I think it's really important for us to establish what that context is so we can understand why people are doing these things. So let's jump in and really get to the bottom of that context so that we're all working from that same frame of reference. I'm going to talk about environmental implications today. And, the first thing to know is that this epidemic or this pandemic started first in Asia, particularly in China. And China is the world's biggest exporter of goods. So that means that there are going to be implications, even if it never left China, like some of the other previous, diseases like SARS and so on. It was always going to have a worldwide impact. And so if you think about the US specifically, which we're going to speak a lot about today because that's our context, but we imported $446 billion worth of goods from China last year. And so that's not just like the finished items that you turn around and sell. It's also things that are used in manufacturing on our side as well, and for a variety of different goods and services. So no matter what, our economy was going to be impacted by this, just from the fact that there was going to be a slowdown in the ability to get those imports from China to here. So there's been a lot of studies around this, and one of them just really talked about how companies have been bracing for that impact and really trying to understand what was going to happen. And so they're expecting production delays. They're also expecting that they may just have complete shortages. So there was always going to be some sort of impact to supply and demand. And so we're seeing that 40% of brands that were actually surveyed are experiencing some sort of shipping delays as a result of that. And we also did a survey of our own because we wanted to get an understanding of how are consumers reacting to this. And so 28% are saying that they're less likely to order products online because of these fulfillment delays that we're starting to see. Consumer confidence is also lower than it's been, in 9 years. So basically going back to around the time where, we had the financial crisis and so on, we haven't been this low since then. Consumer confidence, of course, is just a general indication of whether or not people believe that the economy is going to continue to work well. And of course, when consumer confidence is low, they stop spending as much and they put their money back in their pocket. So basically the whole point here is that, there's going to be some struggles for companies with respect to supply and demand. And I think the biggest place that we've seen this is in the travel space, particularly with airlines. And so, there was an expectation that there would continue to be growth in airline passenger demand, but instead we saw the opposite, and we saw that the airlines were trying to react as quickly as possible. So at first they were keeping a lot of their flights in the air just so that they can maintain those routes. And then they started cutting back on flights, and then, pricing also reacted to that and so on. But they're still kind of in free fall. I just read today that Delta is burning $100 million a day. And so, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of businesses to disappear as a result of this. And that's something that everyone's trying to fight against right now. But on the opposite side of that, what we're seeing is a huge opportunity for direct-to-consumer brands. And, you may be familiar with these. You may see them in your Facebook feed, as you see in the example on the left. And as the supply chain is coming back online, more producers from China are making available these products. Well, you're seeing a lot of these websites that are just being spun up very quickly on Shopify, and they're just doing drop shipping. And so you may see the same product from a bunch of different companies, but it's really just one or two companies that has like 5 or 6 Shopify websites. And it's interesting because you're really getting the opportunity to see that real-time reaction to supply and demand right there in your Facebook. The other side of that is advertising costs are down significantly. I can't say that enough. And I think that brings up a lot of opportunity for many companies that are able to stick it out, and that, CPMs on Facebook, Instagram are down pretty dramatically. We weren't able to find a chart specifically for Google ads, but all the paid media people that I speak to say that you're seeing the same thing on that side, where CPCs are down pretty dramatically as well. So again, if you're a brand that has the cash, this is a great opportunity for you to take a really aggressive position and capitalize on the fact that there are far less people in the auction. But the more negative side of things is that unemployment is rising at an alarming rate. We're seeing that for March, it was up to 4.4%. And some people are predicting that it's going to go up as high as 13%. Rates that we haven't seen basically in my lifetime. And the other side of it is that there's no real indication of when this pandemic is going to be over. You know, the folks at Morgan Stanley put together a few models and such. Everybody's putting together models these days, but they're predicting that realistically things will go back to normal, you know, in about a year from now when that vaccine is widely adopted. And you know, we all hope they're right. We all want to get back to work. We all want to get back to living their lives. But there's a reality that we have never seen a widely adopted vaccine that's taken less than 4 years. And you know, technology has changed, science has changed, medicine has changed. But if we're using the past as an indicator, you know, 1 year is pretty aggressive. But bottom line is that the world as we know it has become a very precarious place. You know, you are questioning things that you never had to question before. You don't know what's going to happen, and you're just trying to do your best to survive, as we all are. That's going to have very wide implications on what you do for marketing. So jumping into what companies are doing, or the producer implications, well, 69% of brands are expecting that they're going to decrease their ad spend in 2020. And of course, when you're in paid media, that's going to be, you know, really something that you need to brace for, because companies are going to make these changes at the top level, and you as a marketer have to basically get on board and figure out the best way to do it. But as far as what we're actually seeing in the marketplace, you know, Q1, 34% of people, or there's 34% of a major impact in the decrease of spending. We're seeing that more than double in Q2. And then for Q3 and Q4, there are a lot of brands that still haven't decided yet. So they're kind of in a wait and see type of pattern because they want to see, you know, what our government's going to do. Are we going to open up our economy again? That's going to dictate how they use their budgets. But despite that, people are still seeing a lot of value in search. And I think that's really, the situation is really causing our companies, our brands to think about, how do we get the most value right away? Where is there going to be like a direct response for what we're doing? So you're seeing a lot of slashing happening in display, paid social, linear TV, and so on. But it seems like we're at net zero for paid search because people know that that is the channel where you're getting direct intent and you can capitalize on it. And so let me put my management consulting hat on for a second, go, you know, full Marty Khan on you. In the past, when we've seen brands, you know, take the aggressive approach, the measured but aggressive approach through a recession, they tend to get way more profit than the ones that scale down or scale back dramatically. So from the study that Bain & Company put out a couple years back, they noted that the brands that, you know, are strategic about this going in and through the recession, they saw a 14% increase in profit over those that did not take that more aggressive stance. And they kind of liken it to, you know, driving on a racetrack. You got to be strategic as you go into the curves, and you got to really, you know, get aggressive when you go around the straightaways. So thinking about this as a curve right now, how can you be strategic in cutting what you're doing that's not working, and then also be prepared for where those opportunities are. So as soon as you come out of this curve, you're able to capitalize on what's you know, happened because your competition is dropping off. And so the companies that are increasing are actually really focused on TV, paid digital, video, and SEO. As we go through this presentation, you'll see that there's a common trend that video and SEO are very valuable at this moment in time. But bottom line here is that many brands are definitely contracting right now because they have to. They've got to be you know, mindful of their cash flow and things that they want to accomplish as a brand now and in the future. But the ones that have a lot of cash or a good strategic position, they see that this is an opportunity to get out in front of their competition, and they're really just doubling down on those direct response channels. So what about consumers? Well, we're all living in this time period where, you know, we just don't know what we're up against. And what that means from a marketing perspective is that any pre-existing market segmentation is invalid. Like the personas you've been working off of, let's say they were someone who travels to work every day. Well, they don't do that anymore. And so there's a series of behaviors that are very different for all consumers. And I want to just get into that in more detail. So I'm going to hand it off to Genesee to speak more on this.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Just going to dive into this. So we can all agree that we're going through really difficult times, and many of us are hardly getting by. This consumer behavior has definitely changed, and it's leading us to reimagine existing marketing segmentations. So in the meantime, can you go back previous slide? Thanks. In the meantime, we're still being impacted on a daily basis. A study conducted by AYTM show that over 80% of the population is experiencing severe and moderate levels of impact. Their study showed that unemployment was the highest level of severity. Weeks later in April, we're seeing that simply moderate impact, indicating high levels of distress caused by unemployment and inability to pay rent and for people to sustain themselves. Obviously, normal life today means Googling coronavirus updates 10 times a day, whether you're looking for stats, medical information, or simply things to do during the pandemic. COVID-19 is definitely the topic of almost every conversation that we have today. And on average, users are spending more time reading coronavirus-related articles. Since January 1st of this year, the average COVID-19 reading time has increased by over 60%. Users are also turning to more credible sources such as their local news sites and large media organizations for this information.
Yeah, they're not really going to Breitbart right now.
Definitely not. And I can't even tell you how many times I've visited the CDC during this time, but they're definitely bookmarked now. People are getting their information from the CDC, and they're considering them one of the most reliable sources during this time. You can also see higher engagements in online activity that provides some kind of social interaction. So we see people are engaging Facebook and YouTube, not so much with Netflix. We see here that there was a surge, but that's for people to just engage in content online. And the ones that are providing more social interaction, we see Facebook and YouTube because people are getting face-to-face contact there. Since the first US COVID death, engagement in these apps have also surged. These are messaging apps, so people are looking for ways to connect with each other, video engagement, and simply just messaging each other, reaching out to people that they know, friends and family. While a few of us are also very privileged to continue working from home and engaging in video conferencing like we're doing right now, these applications are also being used to bring consumers together while we're staying apart for non-work related sessions. We also have gaming and social entertainment platforms experiencing increased traffic while sports media ratings continue to decline. People look for distractions or a way to occupy their time on applications where they can still engage and communicate with other users. Yeah, we still have 5% of consumers leaving their houses to go on dates.
Crazy. Tinder's gonna kill us all.
These changes in consumer behavior are extremely apparent in our daily lives and in shopping experiences. With what we now call pandemic buying, consumers are stocking up on food and personal items. Almost 90% of consumers have encountered shortages of the products that they intended to buy, in turn abandoning brand loyalty. American spending behavior also shows that consumers are swaying away from brand loyalty, purchasing products from brands that are offering what they need. And over 60% of consumers are placing online orders despite longer delivery times. Supermarkets, media, retail sites, they've also increased their profits due to consumers' high demands. In the middle of March, we saw session durations for supermarkets, marketplaces such as Amazon, and DIY sites. They were all up by extremely high percentages. This week over week comparison shows site traffic and sessions increasing as more people are continuing to spend time online. with a new norm comes the adoption of new digital activities for high income earners, Gen Zs, and millennials.
Yeah, I think this one is especially interesting. You know, I think when you think about what's going to happen in the future, I think we're really seeing opportunities for companies to really help people establish a new behavior. And you know, when you talk about something like grocery delivery, um, it just hadn't caught on as much as you would have expected. And I think that more and more people are getting opportunities, or they're really forced to get their groceries delivered. That's going to yield a permanent change. And so, really, just like digging into those different behaviors and how they are associated, or potentially opportunities for brands, is a good thing to be doing right now from a research perspective, so you can figure out like what new things you can offer to consumers as they're changing.
Definitely. So we conducted a survey using 559 participants, and we averaged it out, weighted, so it's representative of the US population. We further segmented by employment status. So regardless of consumers' current employment status, 60% of consumers strongly agree that they feel safe to immediately return to work, meaning that the government reopens, not that it's safe to go outside, regarding the effects of COVID-19 at the moment. These are the proto-personas that we came up with based on our data and further research. We were able to segment them into 3 different segments: essential workers, non-essential workers, and unemployed. And we'll be providing more information on our personas in our upcoming guide. Our data and persona alignment also indicate that there's potential behavioral changes in market consumptions. However, consumers are expected to be selective in maintaining new behaviors after the pandemic. It's highly rational for consumers to avoid engaging in certain activities such as traveling or even attending events. Average anticipated back to normal timeline is about 6.5 months from today. As marketers, business owners, we can definitely help the timeline from extending. Here we can see that the levels of optimism are, there isn't too much disparity across generations, indicating that consumer behavior might not be as drastic. However, Americans are still optimistic that we're still optimistic that we can overcome this pandemic. However, because of the impacts that COVID-19 has caused on the economy, almost 60% of Americans feel that the economy itself is going to take a couple years to recover. But with video streaming up by 40 to 50%, it's a great opportunity for brands to reach out to users with their own video content and continue inspiring users to be optimistic. Consumer activity suggests that users are looking to connect with other people or otherwise escape from their circumstance, and video is a primary content type that they're using to do it. So based on the data that we collected and research that we've done, we've seen that users are using video content as their primary source of communicating with people, finding information, and just staying updated with all COVID-related information.
Awesome. Thanks, Genesee.
No problem.
So we're going to jump into marketing channel implications, and we're going to do a bit of a switch of the lineup because we got to start getting Faja in here as well, because she's going to start to speak in a second. But in the meantime, you know, I'm going to hand it off to Nate so we can talk about some of these marketing channel implications.
All right, yeah, so 2 of the big things that I noticed when it comes to brands being tone deaf are, first of all, a lot of the advertisements that came out, especially at the beginning, were mistimed. I mean, a lot of brands, they already had these things put into place and they needed to run them, but it was just poor timing. So Corona ran an advertisement for their hard seltzer, for example, and it had the background of a beach. A lot of beaches are closed, and it was just kind of a reminder to everybody that, hey, life is not normal. We can't go to the beach and enjoy a Corona or a Corona seltzer. Another good one was, or the opposite of a good one was Geico. They ran a perfect high five commercial right at the beginning. And especially with social distancing, this just came across pretty poorly and they pulled it almost immediately. The next thing is, aside from just the mistimed advertisements, brands are not distinguishing themselves enough across different industries. So you can see Apple, T-Mobile, Acura, Grubhub, and even MasterCard. I mean, a lot of these advertisements are pretty much identical. We're apart but still united. We'll get through this together. And I mean, these are really good insights to give us, because it reassures us, it makes us feel better. But at the same time, these brands are not setting themselves apart at all. But there are brands that are doing, like approaching COVID-19 in a much better light. So Nike, for example, they ran a campaign about play inside and play for the world. And Chipotle took advantage of everybody using Zoom. So now they're doing like every day they do like a lunch Chipotle together. So you can jump on Zoom and just talk with a bunch of people who are also enjoying their lunch. And what I thought was one of the more creative ones was JP Morgan Chase. They showed that even though they're one of the largest banks in the world, they're still going through the same work from home issues that we are. And they showed this through like this Zoom advertisement that they had. Additionally, like online education has increased quite a bit. So Moz Academy, for example, they're offering their services for free right now. If you've never done Moz Academy, highly recommend you jump in and do this while it's free. But also Harvard University. I mean, you can go in and check out some free online courses that Harvard is offering. And that's just really cool, interesting, and unique. I mean, usually you would not be able to get this kind of education without actually going to Harvard. And I will pass it back over to you. I do with Mike.
Thank you kindly. Cool. So let's talk about how the channels have changed a bit. So I think that there's, of course, a huge opportunity because of the fact that people are such a captive audience, and also the fact that, people need a lot of things right now, right? So, and I know Faj is going to speak more about the captive audience idea, but we're seeing that conversion rates were up 21% for e-commerce sites as compared to the pre-COVID times. So, it's a great opportunity to be an e-commerce site, specifically if you're one that is in an area that, people are needing things that they can't leave the house for right now. And then also email is up with respect to open rates and click-through rates. So open rates are up 40% since pre-COVID-19 time. So huge opportunity to think about email. I know a lot of people think of email as like, you're sending things into a void that aren't really seen, but it's still one of the most powerful channels for driving whatever you're trying to do. And then costs per, CPMs for paid media and such, or in different social channels. As an example here from the data from Social Bakers, we're seeing that CPMs have dropped to about 81 cents on average, when they were up at around like $2 per as average before. And ads with human interaction are down 27%. So as you might imagine, there are people that are being reactive to this idea of social distancing and not having a lot of their creative showcasing people together in the way that we always did before. That's something that you want to be mindful of in your campaigns moving forward, to make sure that you make those adjustments so that we don't have, people that are not interacting with your ad because they feel like you're not being responsive to what's going on in the real world. And 74% of the respondents that looked at this study that Influencer Marketing Hub ran are showing that they're posting less to their social accounts. And I think part of that is because brands are scared to say something wrong, and they haven't had the chance or taken the time to think through, like, what do we want to say in this environment? But the reality of it is this environment isn't going away anytime soon. And so you're going to need to, make those decisions from your content strategy to determine what you should be putting out there. So, Faja, I think this is you.
This is definitely me. So like naturally, and I don't think there's anything surprising here though, that time spent on apps and on mobile has continued to increase year over year, according to App Annie, just with downloads increasing year over year from Q1 2019. TikTok is continuing its world domination. So there's definitely a huge opportunity there. Similarly with like Instagram Live and Facebook Live, but also Messenger apps, similar to what Genesee said, people are just reaching out for connection. So all of the Messenger apps are seeing a big boost here as well. One particular notable thing, of course, is that at-home fitness app downloads have surged about 40% with like apps like Nike Training Club and Peloton offering free trials. So.
Absolutely. And in addition, we're seeing more brands shifting away from Instagram. In addition, we're seeing more brands shifting away from Instagram to Twitter. I don't necessarily know why, because I don't use Instagram that much. But nevertheless, I think that yields an opportunity because of the fact that less brands are being active on Twitter, and there just also may be an opportunity on Instagram that I'm just personally not aware of. But next thing is that Google has made it free to be on Google Shopping. And this is huge because if you were spending a lot of money in Google Shopping before, you can now use that budget towards something else, and Google Shopping still remains relevant. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for brands to really ramp up what they're doing in Google Shopping and not have that take away from other brands. But I think the key thing to note is that search is still the only channel where you're getting that real-time intent. And it's really the best way for us to understand what people want right now. No other channel is going to give you that type of insight. And so search is very well positioned to be something that survives as other channels start to dwindle. So what you want to do is be looking for your emerging questions. Is a good place to start using Search Console. So you can use filters like this. And this is an example from a client that we have in the lending space. There's a lot of new emerging questions that are happening because of the fact that the government has rolled out all these different programs and there's a lot of confusion. So it's very clear what we need to create content around in order to really support people in this time. And so you can do the exact same thing in your Search Console. Other than like Google Trends, this is going to be the best place that you can get the fastest data from, because a lot of those other tools are like weeks behind or months behind. So, digging into your Search Console, which is going to be free, and then just looking at the last 28 days and looking for queries that have question words in them are going to help you identify what those emerging terms are. But there's also been a lot of changes in search demand. So, we worked with the folks at Advanced Web Ranking, and they generated this tool that shows us across their customer base. They've got, a ton of customers across the web. And this is represented globally to see how is search demand changing in each vertical. So we can see that arts and entertainment dropped pretty dramatically. We're seeing that science drop dramatically, which is I'm fearful of right now. But travel being a good example where, the bottom pretty much just fell out over the course of the last 2 months. And so you have the opportunity to get a high level look to see how's your space doing. So you can know, was this an algorithm update or was this just a reaction to what's happening by consumers? Back to you, Nate.
Yeah, so when it comes to search demand, one of the ones that I really looked into was food and drink. And looking at some of the search terms that were really popular for the past few months or just historically, once everything hit with COVID, it just flipped entirely. So restaurant near me used to be a lot more popular than food delivery. Now, as you can see, like it just is the complete opposite. More people are ordering in, and a lot of restaurants are just closed. And if you look at bars and alcohol delivery, it's pretty much the exact same trend. It's not nearly as popular to order alcohol apparently, but I mean, bars are closed, so alcohol delivery is more popular than trying to find a place to go get a drink right now.
Yeah, we order from Drizzly probably 3 times a week.
Yeah, I was about to say Drizzly is going to be really, really hot over the next few months, especially here in New York. But they're not alone. I mean, video conferencing, so Skype, Zoom, Google Hangouts, that jumped pretty dramatically at the beginning. And then also, people can't go to the gym anymore, so home workouts are really popular. For example, my wife and I, we actually ordered a fitness trampoline right when this whole thing started because we have 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. We can't go out that much. We can go for walks, but they can't go to the playground like they're used to. So we got this fitness trampoline just so that they can get their energy out. They do have like this small little courtyard in the back, but it's 100% concrete and they will get hurt if they play out there for too long. So fitness trampoline has saved our life. We jumped on that trend pretty early.
Yeah, and I expect there's going to be a Peloton in my house pretty soon too.
Obviously, I mean, streaming services, they've always been popular, but once this happened, they just jumped pretty dramatically. Amazon Prime Video and Hulu saw pretty good increases, but not to the point that Netflix did. I want to blame some of this on the Tiger King, but I also want to blame the Tiger King's popularity on COVID-19. So it's kind of like they're just too closely tied together. But not only did Netflix jump in popularity, but their stock price has increased by more than $100 per share since the start of 2020. And I think this just kind of goes back to Mike's point that SEO it's never been more important than it is now because the search demand increased so much and it's almost identical to the increase in the stock price since the start of the year. Online shopping, this is one that I think will actually continue to increase once COVID-19 is, we're back to normal and that's all in the past. But I think a lot of local vendors will start to look into, like their online websites a little bit more than they have now because I think they've realized that they can't rely on their brick and mortar to just keep their customers. They have to be able to prepare for things like this. And online shopping is just going to be that much more important.
Hey, Nate, do they have offline websites?
They do not. They do not. Finally, just a couple of emerging opportunities. So, Faja, you touched on this, but video has never been more like captivating. I mean, people can't leave their home; they need to be entertained. So, I included a video from Ina Garten. She did this quarantine cosmopolitan video, and it went viral pretty quickly. So, it's one of those things where people are just looking for ways to engage. And this is probably like the best way to do it right now. Just keep people interested and engaged and at the same time entertained.
Wonder where she got that delivered from.
Good question. Finally, another big emerging opportunity is to capitalize on like rich snippets. So use schema markup. There's tons out there, but videos, we've talked about that. That's going to be all the more important to like mark up your videos correctly. Product listings. And then they also have COVID-19 announcements. So all of this is just going to be a little bit more important. And Mike, I think you actually touched on a few of these in one of your recent blog posts for AWR, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, there's also going to be a pretty extensive guide that comes out on the back of this webinar. The webinar, we've got an hour, but we've probably got like 5 hours worth of data and insight. So, we just try to shove some of the best stuff in here. But you can expect that after this that we're going to, give you some more things to read as well. So how do you change your approach? Well, I think there's a few key things to think about. One, your brand needs to revisit whatever their core digital marketing strategy is, with the idea of the context that we're living in now and how are users actually reacting to all this stuff. It's very easy for a brand to continue to do what it's always been doing and say like, hey, this is our strategy, people will eventually acclimate, but brands that do things like that are going to be the ones that you're less likely to return to when you feel like they're not really looking out for you. And the other point is that any of the market segmentation you've been working off is just no longer valid. So you've got to revisit that. And I think some of the data that Genesee has produced will be super helpful for you to layer on top of your existing personas and such, so you can make those adjustments based on the behaviors that we're seeing actually happening in the marketplace. People are also gravitating pretty heavily towards search and video. So that's where you need to revisit. You know, if you don't have search as a core part of your strategy right now, you definitely need to rethink that, especially as your competitors are going to be ramping down on their efforts. It's a good time to get in. But also with video, I mean, you know, video as a content type has continued to emerge over the most recent years, and it's more important than ever. Like being entertaining, being educational, these are the ways that people are really connecting with brands right now. So thinking through how you want to approach video content is incredibly important, and you want to make sure that you don't have brand messages out there that are contradicting where you're at now as a brand. So there are messages like, for instance, with the commercials, where commercials were still in flight because people hadn't had the time, or there weren't people, you know, in a place to make a new commercial. So you've got Corona of all brands with these like beach commercials and things that are completely tone deaf. So that's not just true of your commercials; it's also true of your content. And so you've got to adjust all of that as well. And I'm going to hand it off to Faja to speak more about that.
Sure. So we understand that we need to pivot our strategy and kind of get in front of this thing, or kind of where we are now, address and figure out how to pivot a content strategy to be mindful of COVID. But I guess a lot of brands are also wondering, how do we start? How do we get something stood up on our website? How do we get a message out to our customers? I guess the first place you want to start, of course, is auditing, right? Like all of the data that we've kind of run through, and also all of the search demand, we really want to start with what are the key searches? What are our consumers? What are our current audiences looking for when it pertains to our specific business, right? Like there's tons of information. Like, you know, Genesee said, people are really going to the reputable places for coronavirus and COVID-19 information, the CDC, you know, .govs. So they're not especially looking to your brand for that information, but they are looking to your brand for guidance. So some good questions, some good places to start when you're thinking about your content and you're auditing what you currently have as a response is, you know, do you currently have a COVID-19 response ready? If you do, check in the box. Hopefully, you know, it's a prominent placement on your homepage so anyone visiting your website can kind of get right to it. What are the COVID-19 related queries specific to your industry? We go through a couple of content ideas later on in the deck that speaks directly to that. But are you currently addressing your consumer concerns through FAQs or any landing pages? Mike just mentioned what currently exists on your website that's irrelevant at this point, that's tone deaf. Can you do any pruning? Can you do any redirecting to kind of take some of that stuff off? And then ideally, what new products and services can you promote that directly tie into what consumers need at the moment? So that takes us right into planning and execution, right? We have to be really kind of quick to market because this is a moving bullet, and we're trying to like stop it and actually get information to our consumers as quickly and as fast as possible. So there are 9 ways that I think we can really pivot quickly to kind of get something in front of our consumers that meets their needs, but also helps to foster brand engagement and maintain your brand's loyalty with your customers. So we can go right to number 1. I think the first thing, of course, Mike has mentioned is making room to go off script, right? A lot of brands are trying to kind of maintain the status quo, and it's really difficult when there is no status quo. I think in your editorial calendars and your production calendars, you have to make room and make space to be able to go off brand. You know, at the moment, everybody is distracted. All the searches and queries are related to coronavirus and COVID-19. So we really just need to make room and space for us to create something, put together a vetted response that speaks directly to your consumers' needs and their particular issues. I think it's going to go a long way for brands once all of this is over, and people are going to be putting a measuring stick up to see who responded and who did not respond. So that ties directly into identifying what your consumers' concerns are. That includes doing market research. That includes doing organic keyword research, really understanding what are the questions, what are their concerns, who knew, 2 months ago that toilet paper was going to be a major concern for consumers, but being able to provide easily accessible announcements, resources, things that are regularly updated as the news is coming out, as things are being updated. allows you to really maintain clear communication with your audience and with your customers. And it's whether it's like via the web, your blog, whether it's email or social media, just really having an effective communication strategy. So, okay, you know, you need to talk to them, but what do you actually need to say? At this point, I think brands, it goes a long way just being a resource and a help for your consumers. If I'm thinking of something as simple as I have a pet, a dog that I love, and I'm trying to figure out how do I get the medicine I've ordered from Pet Meds in the past, online delivery. They sent me an email right when the crisis broke out and provided me with a list of resources on how to maintain my medication for my dog. Something as simple as that has already engendered loyalty with me. As we've done and we've showed previously, your agency partner really can be a resource to provide your company and your business with the target keywords and the research that you need to be able to provide answers to the questions that your customers have. I think the great thing about content marketing and search in this particular era is that it really just proves out that the freemium model still works and is still proven. You know, there's a lot of information out there, and some of it's good and some of it's bad and some of it's, you know, just kind of like middling. But the idea that you can provide consumers with a lot of free information to get them to continually come back to you is still a proven model, right? We've seen so many brands kind of go to the freemium model like very, very quickly. And it's going to prove out and pay out in the end. I think the example that's coming to mind is Planet Fitness. They just launched an app and a live YouTube content with all free video classes for members and non-members. And that's something that's going to go a long way when people are thinking about what gym to rejoin. Think virtual. I think the other thing that's really interesting about this time when it comes to content is that we're seeing all of these new content avenues spring up that are really cool. Things like online cooking classes, boutique fitness gyms providing Zoom workouts. It's creating this kind of like brand new space for brick and mortar or in-person businesses to be able to use the web, kind of similarly to what Nathan is saying, a lot of online shopping, e-commerce avenues are cropping up. And I think when people are thinking about content marketing, they can also be thinking about specifically what do we have that's a physical product that can transfer to being a virtual product, to being an online product or service, and be able to create a brand new product, service, or revenue stream that way.
Yeah, I think the versus things are a good example of that, like RZA versus Premiere and all those types of things. Like that's a completely new format that uses Instagram Live in a way that, you know, is just amazing.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. It's a huge opportunity there.
Cool. But of course, educating and entertaining is a priority. Like during these troubled times, people want distraction more than anything, right? People are trying to figure out ways to maintain some semblance of normalcy. They're trying to enjoy themselves. You know, we're captive. There's really not much you can do. So I think educating and making entertaining a priority is going to help, you know, take your brand in the long term. No, shows goodwill and positivity, and that you're helping consumers cope. So kind of just exactly what you were just saying, Mike, now is definitely the time to go live. We've seen apps like Crowdcast, apps like House Party, Instagram Live that's just been taking off. And it just plays into the idea that video is going to be something that's prominent in content strategies going forward. Number 8, of course, we have to sell, right? People are still shopping. There's a lot of discussion between what's essential, what's not essential. But I think it's important at this time to sell gently and to sell with intention. And what that means to me, or what that means for a larger content strategy, is to really be mindful of what you're pushing. Be mindful that like unemployment is at, you know, a record high. Consumers don't have the funds. So if you have sales or if you have deals, you're pushing those things, but you're also pushing things that people need in this moment, not things that they'll need, you know, 2 months down the line. And then, of course, you're leading with empathy. A lot of the brands that are really winning in this time and in this space are people that are really pushing the idea of empathetic understanding and solidarity with essential workers, delivery, you know, grocery shoppers, brands that are actually putting forth the goodwill and showing that the things that really matter during this time, you know, is human connection, and it's putting, you know, people over products.
Cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit about measurement. because, I think a lot of folks are still measuring the way that they were prior to the pandemic, which doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. Of course, as a brand, you've got to continue to be thinking long term, but you need to be acting more locally or more short term and thinking about repositioning those KPIs to align with that. So if you're thinking about, like 120-day sales cycles and things like that, well, it's going to look like everything you're doing is failing, right? So there needs to be other metrics that you can look at to indicate that you are performing. So resetting those KPIs and making them more relevant to right now is definitely something that should be done. And if you're thinking about conversions that are, you do something online and tie it to an offline activity, obviously that can't happen. So now's a good time to take a look at your measurement. Just like, if you're not already filtering for your IP address when you're crawling a website or when you're looking at the analytics, because everybody's now working from home, you're not going to have the right data. So this is a good time for everybody to take a step back and think about, like, how are we doing analytics now to account for what's going on in the real world? Back to you, Faja.
Some content ideas, right? So we went through some of the different primary spaces that are being influenced heavily with the crisis, specific to travel and hospitality, right? We're looking at the industry and the behavior change, like people just are not allowed to travel. So the emerging trends, or a lot of the search data we're seeing is, searches around flight cancellations, when will it be safe to travel, information on travel restrictions. But I don't think that means that all of the content needs to concentrate around those specific, particular highly concentrated searches, right? We also need to be thinking long term if we're thinking about marketing, once this crisis is over. Specific content ideas are like, well, should you travel now? Airline or hospitality companies can really provide detailed information on, where can you travel? What are the restrictions? This example is a kayak example. They have a interactive travel restrictions map, and it basically shows that the entire world is closed. But that's useful information for anybody who's thinking about planning a trip or needing to travel for emergency reasons. Some other cool ideas could be, hotel companies really like giving a guide to hotel living. Everybody's in their house now, but who hasn't fantasized about, going on a world tour and living from luxury hotel to luxury hotel? You can create some really cool content to help consumers do that, or, plan their next escape, once the country opens back up, once the world opens back up. Personal finance. So this one is a sticky one, right? Because we have to approach this content with great sensitivity, right? People are very concerned about their money. They're concerned about paying their bills, about their mortgages. But on the flip side, mortgage rates, interest rates are very, very low. So people are also considering whether they should refinance. Should they move their personal investments to more secure stocks or bonds? And I think any information here really should be about education versus entertainment, right? We really want to educate people on, like, how do you invest during a downturn? Like, what types of things should you be investing in? Should you refinance? Is this the right time to do it? Amerisave had a really cool interactive and graph just kind of showing the volatility of mortgage rates over the last few months. Fashion and retail, of course, people are not, they're shopping only for essential items. But I think there's confusion around, like, what is an essential item? So any kind of retail brand, whether it's, the big marketplaces or even a smaller brand, can really help to distill or dispel any kind of confusion around that. We can also think about, like, people are searching for comfortable work from home clothes. People who've never had to work from home before, they're thinking of ways in which to set up their shops. You can create some cool content around influencers and allow them to kind of get in on the action to create or build cool work from home wardrobes. You can take in the video aspect and host a house party runway to kind of show any kind of clothes or things that are pertaining to loungewear. Fitness, of course. I think the fitness companies, they have this thing under wraps. I actually just bought a bike that I ordered like 3 weeks ago, so it's still on its way. But it'll be here like once we're able to go back outside. But gyms are closed, so like even people who can't afford a $3,000 bike are trying to work from home. So there's a large opportunity to create library content, to put workout information out there. App downloads are just basically through the roof. You can do some cool things with people who can't get dumbbells, like Jill is saying. Weird object workout guide, like what do you have around the house that you can actually use for a home workout? I've been doing a lot of walking, but I'm really curious to know like how much walking equals like 1 mile of running. So any kind of comparison, things like that help people to maintain normalcy in their workouts can go a long way.
So Faja, we're gonna race on Peloton?
Yep. I got me I call it a ghetto-thon. It's my TV and just like a regular standard fitness bike.
Nice.
You know, what do they say? Ingenuity. Food and drink. Again, like restaurants and bars are closed, but of course, like people are searching for grocery delivery and food delivery. To Mike's earlier point, like that's an avenue and something that we'll see potentially pick up once this is over. But I think there's also a really huge opportunity here for goodwill, for brands to kind of really show solidarity with delivery people, with the, being able to tell them, like even having it be some kind of fun tongue-in-cheek type of a campaign specifically around like your burrito is essential, right? Like I need my like Chipotle lunch. If you tip your delivery person, you know, whether the delivery service will either match that tip, you know, up to a particular percentage. I think from an SEO standpoint, there's a lot of opportunity around store locator pages. Like people need to know the correct information. There are a lot of store closing, hour changes, and being able to update those pages and allow those pages to have all of the necessary information is super crucial. And then of course, like potentially doing like a dining out at home guide. How can you maybe get the 5-star experience with your, you know, your Grubhub takeout? Lastly, so automotive, this one again is another pretty precarious situation, right? And there isn't really much that brands can do here, specific that people are just driving less, and they're buying cars a lot less. Even though in Pennsylvania, I think they just authorized like online notary for online auto sales. So there's also an area of opportunity that, you know, will grow out of this pandemic. But I think gamification is really going to be cool here. A dream car simulator, allowing people to have that experience of test driving a car online, potentially also with goodwill, like which auto companies, which auto manufacturers are producing ventilators. That type of information is going to foster brand loyalty. And then my thing is blocking out the last bullet point.
There's global impact. Global impact of fewer cars. What's the upside? This report could show how fewer cars on the road is reducing emissions and helping the planet.
Right, thinking about climate change, right? Looking at it from not, you know, a purely altruistic standpoint. Tech. So again, everybody is online, right? Like, so tech is seeing an increase in this particular instance, right? Because everybody is online, everybody's looking at technical solutions to solve the pandemic. We're looking at teleconferencing, we're looking at developments or advancements in technical health. For me specifically, I'm also thinking about like how connected is the world. Any tech company could potentially provide information around like an interactive map around internet access and stability around the world. We've all had, you know, a crazy Zoom call go haywire, but there is a case for work from home, and ideally working from home is going to change, or remote work is going to change quite a few industries, and that it might reduce overhead. So potentially there's some content opportunity around an infographic outlining how teleconferencing is changing our business. And then specifically, what are the tech solutions to our everyday tasks, right? Like what are the different advancements or innovations that are coming out that are going to change the ways in which we live our daily lives? I think Mike is gone, but I need him to go to the next slide. You're here. So media entertainment is, of course, an area where you can have a lot of fun. Trolls World Tour is basically projecting 80 mil for its release week, which is kind of crazy. Like everything is from home. You know, DJs are dominating. What'd you say?
It's an amazing movie.
It's an amazing movie. I got to add that to my queue. So everybody's looking for things to do, whether it's Netflix and chill, whether it's fun things to do with their kids. Virtual tours, museums, zoos, like everybody's trying to figure out how can they get these in real life experiences online. I think there's a lot of just editorial content opportunity here for video games to help you socialize, Lego, they already have a really amazing kind of Lego Academy, but they can host some social media challenges to get, people at home kind of in on the action. And then with movie theater closings and potentially that being something that shifts once this is over, we can also think about how do we move the movie theater experience to at home if things like Trolls World Tour and in-home theatrical releases is going to be the new norm.
Cool. So, I know that we're at time, but we've got one more section that we want to get through. Those of you that can't stick around, we definitely appreciate you coming. You can see the rest in the replay. But those of you that are going to stick around, I'd like to introduce you to Alex, our SEO engineer.
Hey, guys.
Marketing in a post-COVID-19 world.
Hey, Mike, you hear me all right?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so I'll take a look into the future, into the post-COVID world. And this is actually kind of cool from my point of view. So a lot of the things that we're seeing right now are not new. The pandemic just expedited everything and acted as a catalyst. Amazon was booming. All the communication companies like Slack and Skype and Zoom, they were doing pretty great already. So pandemic just acted as a catalyst. And inefficient businesses that didn't really know how to approach the digital strategy, well, they're doing pretty bad now because of the pandemic. It was just inevitable, and the pandemic pointed that out. And obviously Instacart's doing amazing, and I do think that will be the future of a lot of grocery shopping for a lot of us. Cool. And like I said, not a lot of new things. This is just a catalyst. Retail was dropping, brick and mortar stores were closing. I know you guys heard about Pier 1, GameStop, Gap, Macy's. I mean, these are just to name a few. We already projected to close about 3,000 stores in 2020. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There were over 9,000 stores that closed in 2019, 8,000 in 2018, and the projection is just going to keep picking up. So digital will keep eating away at brick and mortar, and you better be prepared. So if you're not ready for digital, you're not ready to do the great shipping, great returns, great customer service, and online experience, this is going to be a stress test. Next slide. Another thing that's also getting a big kick is automation. So there was a huge incentive to automate things before. The pandemic just expedited it to like the 10th power. Workers are not dependable in the sense that we do have limitations on how much we can work. We do need healthcare. We can get sick. Robots don't have that problem. So automation incentives have risen a lot. Oxford University actually did some research, and they compiled all the numbers about jobs which are going to be potentially automated away and gave it a probability. You should review that list, and I have the link in the slide. If you are marketing to people who are in jobs that are going to go away, now's the time to reconsider. Also, there's automation-proof jobs. So those are the people you probably should consider speaking to more. A lot in the healthcare industry, obviously things like nursing are never going to go away. There is the human touch that's not going to be automated. A great opportunity. Obviously, costs will be cut through automation, unfortunately. But once again, as marketers, you have to see how you can pivot on this. Cool. And on top of digitization and automation, people are working from home. If companies can't cut costs through automation, they will consider cutting costs through not paying rent. So a lot of people who are working from home, probably a lot of us on this call, are not going to go back to the office. We are going to stay at home because that's how costs will be cut. It will create a lot of cool efficiency, but it will also create a whole new target demographic. What do people want at home? What are they doing with all this free time when they're not commuting? Just think about how much people spend in their cars or on trains. All this time is going to be spent on entertainment or doing something, and they'll have money to spend on that during that free time. And one last thing, which is I think is the amazing silver lining. I know we have people joining us from Spain who already had the UBI bills passed. Basic income will be the future. As I mentioned, automation, cost cutting will lead to, unfortunately, a lot of unemployment. However, in US, we're already working on providing a basic income. So if you think about it as a whole new class of people who have that basic income and a whole new set of money that people are going to be spending, that's a great stimulus to the economy. Think of everybody who didn't lose their job and still getting that stimulus. That money will probably get pumped right back into the economy. And this is where businesses and marketers can truly capitalize. And I think this will be a great opportunity for all of us here.
So you do know Yang is not running anymore, right?
Well, credit where credit's due. And he did say he's not counting out 2024. So
okay. Gotcha. Well, I hope you got paid for your campaign contribution. All right, so in closing, so, our world has changed in ways that we haven't even completely wrapped our heads around at this point. But, this idea of a new normal, we're not going to go back to everything we were always doing. There are just certain things that are better. And like Alex was just saying, companies are going to also start to realize that. And again, expedite a lot of the things that they were thinking of doing anyway. So it's not going to be the same world that it was in January or February. But just to recap the core problems, if you're facing budget cuts, this is a good time to think about how do we capitalize on those drops in CPCs and CPMs. Good opportunity to make a case for video and search when you're pulling budget out of other things. And it's a great time to rethink how you can tighten up your email programs, because those are incredibly powerful right now. Your market segmentation is invalid, so it's a good time to survey your customer base or go back to the well and rethink your market segmentation, do some market research. And you don't know exactly what people need right now. So reviewing the emerging search trends is going to be incredibly pivotal to your success moving forward. Launching new content that speaks to those needs, and then revisiting your approaches to measurement to make sure that you're in alignment with what people need right now. And some of your existing content may be tone deaf. This is a great time for you to be auditing your content across all channels, not just your website. Also, what do you have, in flight for your paid media? What do you have already pre-scheduled in your social media? Everything you have going out, take a look and make sure that it speaks to your company's new standards and update it. And that's all we got. I know we're over time, but we can take a couple questions, and it looks like a few have already come in. So I'm going to answer those. We'll give it, an extra 3 minutes so we can get these questions answered. If you've got any other questions, feel free to pop those into the question box. So first question is there's a question about whether or not there is schema specific to COVID-19 announcements. The answer is absolutely. So Google rolled this out a couple weeks ago. And basically, it's meant for local businesses to let people know what has changed about the business in the last, few months. And this is incredibly important because of the fact that one of the reasons that people are not going to stores is that they don't know if your store is open or not. And I can tell you from my own experience being here in Brooklyn, I was thinking of buying a printer a couple days ago, and I couldn't tell if Staples was actually open, so I didn't go. So I ended up just going to our office and grabbing our printer that was in the office. So next question is, do you have any insights on branded podcast demand, or whether creating a podcast right now is a good use of marketing budget while other efforts are paused? Who wants to take that? I don't listen to podcasts.
I can take that. I think anything that can serve to get your message out is valuable. I guess the questions that I would ask is this something that you can sustain long term? Is it going to just be kind of a campaign-based podcast that you're doing like at the moment to kind of meet demand and to reach out to customers? You can, again, drive the same kind of distribution with podcasts, the same promotion with a branded podcast. But I guess I would also think, like, once this is over, is this something an asset that you're going to use, or are you going to do this just kind of campaign based and then approach it from that way?
Awesome. And the only other thing I would add is that Rand Fishkin's new platform, Spark Turo, just launched today, and they have data on who follows which podcasts. So as you're reviewing your audience segmentation and such, I would say take a look at that data to make sure that you're finding the right podcast to learn from in order to figure out what you should be doing. Okay, last question that's on the screen here. Has there been any insight on bringing in new customers for service-based businesses like home remodeling, tree trimming, et cetera, during COVID-19, since these businesses have traditionally needed face-to-face meetings to sign clients, build design plans with, perform service calls. Many small business owners are throwing their hands up in the air. Is there anything we can be doing beyond our regular paid media, earned SEO, and social media marketing? It's a mouthful. Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, actually, I have a great example. So one client that we work with does do something along the lines of remodeling, and they had to do a complete pivot. Basically, what they're doing is providing people with the resources or whatever products they would be selling and using for remodeling, and giving people the option to either delay the remodeling once the world opens back up, or do it themselves, and they can guide them through it. So obviously, you don't want to have any person-to-person contact at this point. So if you kind of pave the way for those sales later on by providing them with the resources and the tools, and then later following up on those jobs, that's a great way to not lose any business right now for people who are probably sitting at home seeing a lot of stuff they haven't noticed before and probably willing to decorate right now.
Yeah, absolutely. In our survey, that was one of the data points we asked about, like, what is the likelihood that people would want to do like home improvement, home maintenance type tasks, and when would they want to get started with that again? That was one of the things that people pretty heavily indicated, that as soon as the world reopens, they are happy to have someone in their house to do these things. At the same time, we've also worked with companies that have done things like this in the past. And a lot of them had been moving towards a more digital, like mock-up type of view of things, where they had programs where it's like you take a picture and then you can do the modeling of how it might look. And I know there was already a shift towards people bringing that type of stuff online. So I suspect that that's just going to like get better over the course of the next couple of months, being that that's such an issue for those types of businesses.
Yeah, and I hate to harp on the same point, but this isn't really changing things. It's just expediting the process. This is probably the direction we were going in anyway. I mean, personally, I don't think a lot of us enjoy having a stranger come to our house. Obviously, if we can't do something, we have to. But ultimately, the more we can have a seamless digital experience, the better people respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all the questions. I just want to thank everybody for showing up. I also want to thank my team for putting together such a fantastic presentation. Also Melvin, our designer, he contributed to this as well. He didn't want to put his face over here, but thank you to everybody for doing such a great job. And like I said, if you are not familiar with iPullRank, we are a SEO company, a content strategy company, a market research company. So all the things that we discussed today, we can certainly help you guys out with. And feel free to get in touch. And like I said, last thing, we're definitely going to come out with a guide on the back of this as well. So you're going to get even more insights in the coming days from us. So just keep up to date, and we'll definitely be emailing you because we know email works. So thanks again, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.